The gate deities of the underworld were ancient Egyptian minor deities charged with guarding the gates of the Egyptian underworld. The Egyptians believed that in the netherworld, the Duat, there were various gates, doors and pylons crossed every night by the solar boat of the sun god Ra and by the souls directed to the world of the dead. Ancient funerary texts provide many different descriptions of the afterlife gates. Sometimes more than 1,000 guardian deities are listed. According to a more general view, every gate was guarded by a minor god who allowed access only to the souls capable of pronouncing the secret name of the god himself, as a sort of password. The walls of many pharaonic tombs in the Valley of the Kings are decorated with the texts of the Book of Gates, which describes the 12 gates or pylons of the underworld. In spite of being imagined as architectural barriers to all intents and purposes, the gates were individually named as goddesses. Chapter 144 of the Book of the Dead mentions 7 gates, each with its own god, a doorkeeper and a herald. For example, the 7th gate is guarded by the god sharpest of them all, by the doorkeeper strident of voice and by the herald rejecter of rebels. Other funerary texts mention 21 secret portals of the mansion of Osiris in the field of reeds with their own names and epithets and protected by zoanthropomorphic deities often depicted crouched on the ground and holding large, threatening knives. The names of these last accesses, still feminine, are from time to time disturbing as the 14th, Mistress of Anger, Dancing on Blood, or harmless as the 3rd, Mistress of the Altar. The guardian gods too were given names that inspired terror and, above all, evoked their fearful powers, for example Swallower of Sinners and Existing on Maggots, even if some texts avoided directly indicating their names, adding these largely unnamed gate deities of the underworld to the group of Egyptian divinities known to scholars, but impossible to inventory. According to the descriptions provided by the wall paintings in regal tombs of the Valley of the Kings, each gate or pylon consisted of 3 elements: a spitfire snake placed in front of the access, b. the gate itself, described both as a true architectural portal and as a goddess, c. and its guardian deities. The solar boat's travel through such gates can be described as follows. First gate, Sia, deification of perception standing on the prow of the sun boat, invites a snake called Desert Protector to unlock the gate to the arrival of Ra who, in the form of the god Adam, deification of the sunset sun, observes his enemies being massacred. Second gate, the guardian god is called Swallower of Sinners and his gate precedes a lake of fire. Third gate, its guardian snake is Stinger while the portal itself is the goddess Mistress of Food. Some jackals watch over the lake of life interdicted to the dead because it is the place where Ra draws his breath. Fourth gate, some deities carry ropes to measure the extension of the netherworld fields, as well as, in the daily life of the Egyptians, the measurement of the fields was carried out for tax purposes. This is also where the 4 human ethnic groups, according to the Egyptians, were depicted: the cattle of Ra, i.e. Egyptians themselves, Levantines, Libyans, and Nubians. Fifth gate, this gate is the goddess Lady of Duration while its guardian serpent is flame-eyed. This access is inhabited by the perfidious demon Apep, embodiment of evil and chaos, bitter enemy of Ra here called Evil of Face. 20 deities managed to stem his devastating power by continuing to dissect it, while the heads of those he devoured emerge from his coils. The sun boat moves on and Ra leaves this dramatic region. Sixth gate, Ra's boat approaches to 7 jackal-headed poles with 2 enemies bound to each one, waiting to be beheaded. Seventh gate, this gate is the goddess Shining One and beyond it there are 20 gods holding a rope ending in 4 whips, 4 falcon heads and 4 human heads. This is an enigmatic and barely understandable point. Eighth gate, this access is inhabited by a flaming snake who burns up the enemies of Osiris. Ninth gate, here stand Horus and Set on a hawk-headed lion. 10th gate, Apep appears again, but chained in order not to harm Ra in his transit. 11th gate, this gate is called Mysterious of Approaches and is overseen by the cat-headed god Meidi, meow onomatopoeia. 12th gate, here stand the goddesses Isis and Nephthys in the form of snakes. The journey through the gates of the afterlife is finished and the sun rises on the world in the form of a sacred scarab Khepri, deification of the morning sun. Geb was the Egyptian god of the earth and a mythological member of the Ennead of Heliopolis. He could also be considered a father of snakes. It was believed in ancient Egypt that Geb's laughter created earthquakes and that he allowed crops to grow. The usual Egyptian name was Geb, perhaps the lame one. It was usually spelled with either initial G- or sometimes with K.GJ. The latter initial root consonant occurs once in the Middle Kingdom coffin texts, more often in 21st dynasty mythological papyri as well as in a text from the Ptolemaic tomb of Petasiris at Tuna el-Gebel, or the name was written with initial hard K-, as e.g. in a 30th dynasty papyrus text in the Brooklyn Museum dealing with descriptions of and remedies against snakes. The oldest representation in a fragmentary relief of the god was as an anthropomorphic bearded being accompanied by his name, and dating from King Djoser's reign, 3rd dynasty, and was found in Heliopolis. However, the god never received a temple of his own. In later times he could also be depicted as a ram, a bull or a crocodile, the latter in a vignette of the Book of the Dead of the Lady Harry Webben in the Egyptian Museum, Cairo. Geb was frequently feared as father of snakes. In a coffin text spell Geb was described as father of the mythological snake Nehebko of primeval times. In more mythology, Geb also often occurs as a primeval divine king of Egypt from whom his son Osiris and his grandson Horus inherited the land after many conflicts with the disruptive god Set, brother and killer of Osiris. Geb could also be regarded as personified fertile earth and barren desert, the latter containing the dead or setting them free from their tombs, metaphorically described as Geb opening his jaws, or imprisoning those they're not worthy to go to the fertile northeastern heavenly field of reeds. In the latter case, one of his otherworldly attributes was an ominous jackal-headed stave, called Mighty One Foot, rising from the ground onto which enemies could be bound. In the Heliopolitan Ennead, Geb is the husband of Nut, the sky or visible daytime and nightly firmament, the son of the earlier primordial elements Tefnut, moisture, and Shu, emptiness, and the father to the 4 lesser gods of the system, Osiris, Seth, Isis, and Nephthys. In this context, Geb was believed to have originally been engaged with Nut and had to be separated from her by Shu, god of the air, for, consequently, in mythological depictions, Geb was shown as a man reclining, sometimes with his phallus still pointed towards Nut. Geb and Nut together formed the permanent boundary between the primeval waters and the newly created world. Ta and Ra, creator deities, usually begin the list of divine ancestors. There is speculation between Shu and Geb and who was the first god-king of Egypt. The story of how Shu, Geb, and Nut were separated in order to create the cosmos is now being interpreted in more human terms, exposing the hostility and sexual jealousy between the father-son jealousy and Shu rebelling against the divine order. Geb challenges Shu's leadership. Geb takes Shu's wife, Tefnut, as his chief queen, separating Shu from his sister wife, just as Shu had previously done to him. In the Book of the Heavenly Cow, it is implied that Geb is the heir of the departing sun god. After Geb passed on the throne to Osiris, his son, he then took on a role of a judge in the divine tribunal of the gods.